Hello, my name's Martha and I'm the co-founder of Paperboat Documentaries. We create video content for businesses, brands and good causes with a strong focus on storytelling. My role as a video producer means that I spend a lot of time working with clients to develop their stories and produce these into video content, whether that's evolving their ideas, suggesting new angles or helping them to identify stories within their business which they may have not thought about. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the benefits of authentic storytelling within your business. I'll also be speaking to Charlotte Khan, who runs Moo Like a children's shop and an online store, to hear about how she uses storytelling to connect with her audience. So let's get started. If you think about your day to day, it's highly likely that at some point you've either shared a story, heard a story, read a story, or watched a story. Every television show you watch, there's a storyline or multiple stories happening. When you ask a friend or family member how their day has been, they'll often reply with a story of their day. When you read the news, you're reading stories of what's happening all over the world. And if you have a family heirloom, there's very often a story behind it. Stories are all around us and humans use them to connect with one another. That's why, in my opinion, storytelling is a really important part of a business. Sharing authentic stories adds a human element to your content, and this can result in you building a stronger connection with your audience. Despite this, a lot of people and businesses shy away from telling their stories. Often it's because they feel that their stories aren't interesting enough. The way I see it is that there are countless stories to be told about your business, and it's the ways in which you share these that is most important. You don't have to limit yourself to only telling the story of what inspired you to start the business. Stories happen to us every day, especially as a business grows and evolves. For example, if you're a photographer, every client you work with will provide a new story to tell. You could share a story about the location of the photo shoot, you could share a story about what you learned or discovered about the people you're working with, or you could talk about how many hours it took you to edit the photographs, or maybe how many photos you took versus how many made it to the final cut. When it comes to storytelling, the advantage that most business owners have is that nobody knows your business better than you. You know every single process and detail, and therefore you are the expert of your own business, so you have all of that content to draw from. However, what we can often forget as business owners, and I'm guilty of this myself, is that other people usually don't know the ins and outs of our business. If you're a graphic designer, it may be standard to you that you sketch out 20 versions of a logo before you settle on the final one. However, to some people who aren't graphic designers, they may have little idea of how much work actually goes on behind the scenes to create a final design. By sharing this process, or in other words, this story, people are able to understand the passion and hard work that goes into what you do, and potential customers get to see into your world. The next question is, what mediums should we be using to share these stories? I guess you could argue that I'm probably a little biased when I say that video content is a great way of doing this. But there are also so many other brilliant platforms to use: social media posts, blog posts, interviews, collaborations with other businesses or brands, podcasts, print media, and more. For that reason, I'm now going to chat with Charlotte from Moo Like to hear how she tells her stories. So, hello Charlotte.
Hello.
Thank you for chatting with me today. I think it'd be great if you could introduce yourself.
So I'm Charlotte, and I run Moo Like which is the kids' shop near the bottom of the old high street. I've been open for about 3 years, and I started with just a physical shop, but I also have a website as well, so I run the website and the shop.
Brilliant. Well, I've been following Moo Like on social media for a little while now, and I think the way that you use storytelling is brilliant, especially on those social media platforms. We'll get into the different types of stories that you tell shortly, but kind of as a starting point for our conversation, would you say that sharing stories is quite natural to you when it comes to your business, or is it something that's been a gradual process?
I think I've never felt very confident in talking because I never felt like I've had enough knowledge or I've been an authority on any sort of subject. I'm not a natural educator. But when you're talking about yourself, that is one thing that I can do. And it's always a story when I'm talking about myself, why I started the business or my journey or what I've been through. Telling those stories is the only thing I am confident in doing. So I think it's always something I've found easy. But over time, I've only realised over time how good it is for the business to be able to do that.
Right, interesting. That was going to be one of my first questions, really, is whether you've noticed by sharing stories, whether it's had a positive impact, whether you've got new customers through it, or you've connected with customers in a different way to perhaps maybe the traditional shop and customer relationship.
I think definitely it is more beneficial than I realised, and that has been a gradual thing where I always thought, sort of on Instagram, I thought like a nice picture and a little short snappy caption, because people don't have the time to be reading all these big long things. But gradually, every now and again, when I did do a bigger Instagram post that was a bit of a story or a bit of an explanation, I was always surprised how many people read it and read to the end or spent time on that. So, and they were always the more popular posts. So I've gradually realised how much people are interested in those little stories. Or just the story behind the business, talking to customers who come in and they're curious as to why I opened it or why I've got my kids with me, and it's just a way of sort of connecting with people.
I see you feature your family quite a bit in some of your posts and your stories and the photos that you post online. You know, you've got your husband Nav, and then you've got your two daughters, Mabel and Luna, and I've seen there's this running joke that you kind of joke that Mabel is from marketing and Luna's from accounts, and there's this nice kind of team feel going on. Is that something for you that you enjoy sharing, or do you ever feel like it's quite vulnerable for you to share that personal side?
That's an interesting question, because I never intended to have them on social media so much, and at the beginning I think it happened organically because I'd opened the shop. Mabel was at nursery, she was a little bit older. Luna wasn't yet walking, so she was just a baby with me 24/7 in the shop. And I thought, she'll play, sleep, and I'll just get on with work and it'll be this wonderful experience. And it was horrendous. It wasn't that. She would destroy the place, spill milk over stuff. I'd find a toy covered in teeth marks, so I couldn't sell it because she destroyed it. It was constant stress, pressure, embarrassment. But if I did catch something she did on camera that was funny, although I'd had an awful day trying to parent and run a business, I'd be able to stick that on Instagram and people would like it or find it funny. So then I did it more and more, and it became a reason to follow us on Instagram rather than me just showing products and saying, I sell this, I sell this, I sell this. So I was like, here's my child falling over, and this is my child destroying my day. And so it evolved, and people liked it and people found it funny, and people related to it, the struggle, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure if you show to any parent some of the posts that you put up, they'd go, oh yeah, I've been there, or I've had a similar situation where I've tried to get on with something. And I think I saw recently, didn't you repaint your new shop? And then one of them put their hand right in the fresh paint.
Yes, yeah. We were up against it trying to get the shop ready, and it's just what you don't need is to someone to just ruin your wet paint job. But I try not to. On Instagram, there's a lot of, this is how my beautiful family and my wonderful parenting, and this aspirational, these images, and I've never done that. I've always done, this is me not in control. These are my kids being awful. This is everything falling apart. Just to be more, just because that's real. I can't even pretend to be inspirational. That's all I've got.
I think that's great because, like you said, sometimes social media can create this false view of everybody's got it together and everyone's children never misbehaves, and then it makes some people feel insecure about what's going on in their lives. So it's great that you feel like, nope, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to say the highs, I'm going to say the lows, I think that's brilliant.
People identify more, don't they? Relate.
Definitely. I saw recently, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, you shared quite an honest Instagram post about your journey with setting up a website and how it didn't quite go to plan initially. Was that a post that you've been wanting to share, like a story you wanted to share for a while, or what was the reason behind wanting to share something like that?
That was a funny one, because I'm really careful not to ever share anything negative or be negative in any way. I'm a kids shop. There's no reason. You could read the news if that's what you want. It's all very light-hearted and positive. So, but then I also want to be very genuine, because people see straight through you if you're not, even on your social media channels, that you know what's not genuine. You know who's, so that was a bit of a different post I wouldn't normally do. So it was me being vulnerable and honest and saying, I started this website and it was a complete flop and I didn't tell anybody, and people assumed I was selling things on a website and I'd spent a fortune on it, and it was a complete mistake. But then just learning and researching and training a little bit more, and then really COVID, the pandemic, it was interesting that the pandemic and lockdown actually made our website work. Then it was really interesting. So it had a happy ending. So I waited until it was a positive story before I shared it. But I had so many messages from that, from people who had set up websites and hadn't worked, and they were just hopeful that maybe it would eventually. So I think a lot of people found that really relatable and interesting. And it was vulnerable and honest, but also positive. It was a nice, happy story.
It's great. I think it's great that you share stuff like that. It's about connection, and sometimes connection then translates into a business relationship or a customer or a client. Not always, and that doesn't matter, but it's just about that kind of building those connections with people so you are memorable, or you have something in common, or they may go, their friend might be struggling with a website and have just set up a shop, and then they'll go, oh no, I read this post about someone that went through this, and then it's just, there's layers and layers, I guess, that stories just kind of create, and it can translate into customers and things in the end.
I think it makes you human rather than a business, a commercial enterprise. You're human, and they're buying into your brand by buying into you. And when they know your story and they've kind of come on that story with you, they feel invested in you and they feel part of. I like to think our people who follow us on social media, especially right from the beginning, they've seen when COVID hit and we thought we were going to close down, and then it actually went really well, and then we've gone to a bigger shop, and they've come on this journey with us, and they know that they've had an input in how we're doing. And so it almost makes them, maybe some people who follow us have never bought anything and may never buy anything, but they still feel part of a community of our followers and our customers, and will talk to people about us. It's just adding value to your brand. The sales will come if you just work on getting people invested in your brand. I'm careful not to share negative things, and this was a little story where we'd got a 1-star review on Google, and I shared it and on stories. I just mentioned it as a little joke that we're a bit gutted, and we told someone and they made us feel better about it. And suddenly, within a couple of hours, we had tons of 5-star reviews on Google, and everyone had just read this story and connected with it and felt a bit sorry for us and supported with these 5-star reviews. So then I wrote that little story on a post, and I said, look at this wonderful thing, and thank you to everyone who has sort of come out. And then we got tons more. And for about 3 days, we were just getting 5-star reviews on Google. And I think we almost got to 50 5-star reviews. And they were really lovely comments, and people taking time to write all this lovely stuff. I mean, none of them, they weren't buying things. These were not sales, but it was such a huge boost to our business for the Google algorithm and our rankings. And these people felt invested enough in us and liked us enough and had followed us for this long that they took the time out of their day to write this review, which cost them no money, but it was a huge thing. And it's like this community of people who felt involved and have boosted us, and it's really lovely.
That is really lovely.
It's a nice example of a not going for the sale. I mean, I wasn't asking for good reviews, but it was just a lovely example of that community of customers.
And I guess that kind of leads on to what I wanted to chat about, which is that vulnerability of, if you are being more open in your storytelling about challenges or issues you're facing, or maybe more personal things that are going on in your life, that can be quite scary, and there can be quite a lot of vulnerability there. So is that something that you have felt in the past with certain things you've posted, or did you feel like that with the Google review story?
I think I did feel a little bit needy when I posted about the Google review, first of all on my stories, which sort of prompted the reviews. But it was such a lovely outcome. I'm glad I did it. And I did also feel a little bit vulnerable when I said that my website was a complete flop when I opened it a few years ago. But I'm not afraid to admit that I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm not completely in control of my life, and everything's a bit of a mess sometimes, and I make mistakes. I don't worry about sharing that, but I'm sure there are things that I would don't feel comfortable sharing, and I just don't. Everything is positive, or if I do share something slightly negative, it has to have a happy ending or a happy outcome. But it is my business and my brand, and I do, I don't feel in a position where I have to spill my heart out if I don't feel comfortable. But I don't mind being vulnerable. I think it does just make you relatable.
Yeah, I think you have to work out what's the right balance for you, and everybody is different. Some people are really happy to be extremely open about things, and some people have a more reserved view and have certain things that are guarded and are private for them. But I think storytelling, in my opinion, you can make stories out of so many different things. Like, if you didn't want to speak about your family whatsoever, you could I'm sure you could still make so many great stories about the shop, about how you decorate it, how you choose the suppliers you work with, a nice customer that's happy to appear on your feed, things like that. Like, you can still share lots of stories without, I guess, getting really personal about yourself if you don't want to. But if you do want to, that's also fine as well.
Yeah, I think when I first opened, and I felt like my story was I'd quit a career and opened a shop, and it was this big risky rash thing that other people wonder what it would be like to just quit their job and do something different. And I thought that was my hook and that was my story. And then the other one developed that I had Luna, my youngest, at work with me. So then my story was I was working full time and parenting full time, and that was my thing, my story. And then these stories just develop.
No, I completely understand what you're saying. Like, you're not just limited to your one story that you maybe started out with, because stories evolve, stories change. You're not in the same shop you used to be a couple of years ago. Yeah. You have a completely different website now. You maybe work with different people. Your kids are older. Things are different. You don't have to be just like fixed in your one story of, like you said, you quit your job and you started this. That doesn't have to be it.
Yeah.
You can let it evolve with you.
Stories have sort of come to me that hadn't occurred to me. So I had, this is my journey, and this is my career, and this is my children. And then when all the headlines, back when we first opened, it was quite frequently in the headlines that British high streets weren't doing very well. So then people would come to me and say, so why have you opened a retail business? And what's the story with you opening a business in an area that's not doing very well? And why? And so that became, and I did a few things just to get into newspapers and magazines and articles. The story would be, what's it like being an indie business owner, and what's it like running a brick and mortar shop under these circumstances? And that became my thing for a while to talk about.
Social media is obviously very present and relevant right now, but for you, is being featured in articles or being in a print magazine like you have been recently, or being on the news like you have been, you're everywhere, being in the news, being in print magazines, being in online blogs, articles, are they just as important platforms to tell your story as social media?
I didn't realise how important it would be to be featured in magazines and things. When I started, I thought I would sell things, I'd work in the shop, and I would put the things I sold on social media. I thought that's how it worked. And then I realised quite soon, somebody told me, it all started from this, won an award, I've got to drop that in. Someone told me to go for this award because they're like, it's free. And if you're a finalist or a runner-up, that is free, but you get to be featured in something, and that's free marketing. That's free publicity. You don't pay for that. So it didn't hurt. So I went for it, won it.
Amazing.
And it got shared, and the local newspaper and the local radio, and it was huge. And I didn't pay a penny for this award. I just went up for it. And it just generated so much awareness. I was like, that's it. You just need to get into the paper, get into a magazine. So then once you're kind of out there, this award I was then out there. And if people Googled me, they'd be like, maybe she's worth talking to because of this. So then it just sort of snowballed. And you can pay to be in a magazine, and it says your address and your website address and a nice photo and what you sell, and you pay for that. But if you have a story to tell, enough for someone to want to interview you or write an article about a certain angle of your business, you've got then half a page or a page that someone's going to sit and invest, have a coffee and read about you and think about you, and maybe think about you afterwards, and that's free. And that is how you get out there. And then the more you do, the more it snowballs. But I mean, you need story. You can't just be interviewed and say, this is what I sell and this is where I am and this is my address. You have to have everyone has a story, but you have to just tell all your different stories.
Well, yeah, that exactly kind of what you said. That was one of the main things I thought would be good to talk to you about is that your stories, everyone's stories are very unique to them, because yeah, there may be lots of children's shops in the UK, but no one has your personal journey of getting there. Nobody else has Luna Mabel Nav. Nobody else has the shop on Folkestone High Street the same that you have. And I think that's what we all have to remind ourselves, because I think sometimes I've heard people say, oh, there's thousands of illustrators, what makes me different? Or there's thousands of video production companies, you know, what sets us apart? And my answer is always your story, because yes, you might maybe create similar things or you may sell similar things, but no one is the same as you. That's what sets you apart, and that's what you have to really put out there. A running theme that I've seen throughout your storytelling on social media and in your blog posts and articles that I've seen you in is you use humour very well. Sometimes I laugh out loud at your Instagram posts. Like, actually, they make me belly laugh, which doesn't happen so much.
Because I never hear that through Instagram. I never hear the laugh.
Well, that, yeah, I mean, and I don't laugh at many things on Instagram because I think it is quite hard to be funny on Instagram, but you managed to pull it off really well in a really natural, funny, doesn't seem like you're intentionally doing it, just seems like you are a very naturally funny person. Is that just who you are, or was that a conscious decision that you thought, oh, I'll bring a bit of humour to this brand because I think this brand is fun and I need to kind of inject that in?
No, it definitely wasn't conscious. I remember being worried because I knew, having a shop, that it would have to be I'd have to be on Instagram all the time. And I'm not a very good photographer. I'm not a very good mother or business person. I can't have this aspirational, beautiful Instagram feed because that's just not where my talents lie. But I can be silly and self-deprecating and goofy, and so I just sort of used that because that's sort of all I had. And then I started, when you're talking, I remember when my followers went over like 500 followers, and I thought, I just always imagine these people in a room, 500 people in a room, and listening to what I'm saying, and I sort of toned down my humour a little bit because I thought, I'm talking to all these people, they might not get it or they might not find it funny. And then I thought, no, screw that, this is me, and if my humour is sometimes a bit odd or a bit strange or a bit dry or a bit dark, I'm going to do it anyway and people like it more and more the weirder it is, I find. So I've just run with it now, and I do have good days, but sometimes I'm not very funny. A couple of times I've deleted a post because I've gone back and thought, oh, that is not as funny as I thought it was last night.
Is there anything that, if someone was listening, like a business owner or someone that was wanting to start up a company or something like that, who was feeling, oh, I'm not sure really where to start with sharing stories online, maybe as the kind of first platform to go, would you have any advice? I
think the way I tell my story and use Instagram to tell my stories has been organic. And if someone had said to me, right, you need to open a shop, and the way to sell kids' clothes is to make gags, and this is what you've got to do and this is how it's got to be, it wouldn't have worked. It's kind of organically come from me being as genuine as I can be and not try and do something I'm not very good at, or not try and do something that is kind of out of my comfort zone particularly. And like you said before, no one has your story, and people are surprisingly interested in your story. I'm always surprised that people are so interested in my story. And my first story that I mentioned earlier about how I quit my job to open a shop, and so many people have done that. I'm not the first person to walk away from a job and open a business. So I did at one time feel that was getting a bit old, and all of my suppliers have done the same thing. Loads of the people who make toys and kids' clothes that I sell have quit jobs to start a new business. But then that's a new story in itself. The fact that I have done that, and I have a shop stocking loads of brands that have also done that. You don't have to overthink building a brand. Your genuine own story, as honest as you want to be about it, it'll happen on its own.
Definitely. Oh, well, thank you, Charlotte. It's been great to talk.
Oh, thank you for letting me talk about myself for so long.
Oh, you've been great, and I'm sure that people listening will really appreciate your honesty and just saying kind of how it all works for you.
Oh, thank you. It's been lovely.
So that was the lovely Charlotte from Moo Like a Monkey. Really interesting to hear what she had to say. That's all from us today, but thanks so much for listening, and I hope that some of the areas we've talked about may be helpful to you in the future. Thanks, bye!